Hello, everyone. How are you? Hope you're doing well. My name's Carl. Welcome to this webinar on behalf of the TEFL Org. We are here live on a Friday afternoon, coming into the evening UK time. I'm here in Belfast, Northern Ireland, where I work as an online teacher. I work as a teacher trainer and I work as an examiner. I work as a teacher trainer for the TEFL Org. So if you are in Northern Ireland or Ireland and you spend a bit of time on one of our practical courses, you might get to spend the weekend with me. Please let me know where you are in the world. It's really nice just to see all the different locations. Also, you never know, you might find a TEFL friend. So if you're watching this live, please do put it in the comments. If you're watching it on one of the reruns, because you can watch this over and over again if you want to on YouTube or something like that, then put your comments in because we do read all the comments. Thank you very much. Hi, Consuela. Hi, Tim. Hi, Nana. Birmingham, New York State, I think that is. And in Italy, thank you very much. Please do let us know where we are. And it is, I've just been told, I've just said it. Did I say it was Friday afternoon? It's actually Wednesday afternoon, isn't it? I promise you this is live. I promise you it is live. It's Wednesday afternoon UK time. I'm just getting a bit ahead of myself because it's Christmas week. Sorry about that. It's because I'm stopping work today, so it feels like a Friday. Right. The topic of today's webinar is lesson planning for online lessons. So this is one of a series of webinars we're going to be doing over the next couple of months, really, about different types of lesson planning. And today we're going to be talking, first of all, about online lessons. So basically what I'm going to sort of presume by you watching this is that you either have already got a TEFL certificate, like 120 hours certificate from the TEFL Org like we do, or from other companies. So you've got an idea about what lesson planning is. You might not have finished the course, but you've got an idea of what lesson planning is. And I'm not going to sort of go in because there's lots of different types of teaching out there, business English, adults, youngsters, academic English, exam English. Plus there's more on top of that. So I'm not going to, it'd be impossible for me to give a lesson plan for each of those. I'm just going to talk a bit about what you might need to include in an online lesson, if that's what you're going to be doing. Okay. So with any lesson planning, with any sort of teaching, the idea is to keep the target in mind. So what is the target? It's basically what at the end of the hour, the 2 hours, or as it was when I was in Sri Lanka, 5 hours that you spend with a student individual or students group, by the end of it, what will they be able to do, or what will they be able to do better? And whenever I do my lesson planning, and whenever I've done teacher training, and whenever I have observed teachers, what I would sort of say is keep a phrase in your head, the teacher, of what the student will be doing by the end. And the one that I use, and there are different ones out there, I use this phrase: by the end of the lesson, my students will something. And that's a plural one. You might, one-on-one is quite often individual, one-on-one, just you and the student. But by the end of the lesson, my students will, and then you can say use the past tense, the past simple better. We'll use vocabulary for shopping. We'll use the present perfect in a different way, something like this. Okay, keep that in mind. It doesn't always have to be grammar, can be vocabulary. The other way to go about it is to maybe do skills-based lessons. So by the end of this lesson, my students will be able to write a CV, write a letter, write a formal letter. We'll be able to read academic texts. We'll be able to read a short story, whatever it might be. Keep those, because that's where you're going to be at the end. And everything you do in your lesson from minute 0 till the 1 hour or the 90 minutes, whatever it might be, builds up to that. Okay. And this is the ideal goal. And if you're being observed by someone, which, you might be in your first sort of year, or every year of teaching, but, if you're new within your first sort of term of working somewhere, you've got to put all the activities together that allows the student to do that. not every student might get there. Hopefully they will get there. It's not the end of the world if not every single student, if you're doing group classes, gets there. One-on-one, you would really expect them to be able to do it by the end of the hour. But that's the ideal goal. Doesn't have to be 100% hit rate, but that is the ideal goal. And if you can show that all the activities lead to that, fantastic. And what I would say is that there's different ways of teaching. And if you've got your own students, which you found yourself and you're providing all the materials, all that kind of thing, which is quite a lot of online, that's where my online classes are, then you would have to get all this yourself. You'd have to think, right, okay, they're, for example, doing a writing class with me. So I'm doing paragraphs. So I have to build up to be able to use paragraphs better. But if you go and work for a company, or you go work for a school, or you go work for a university, something like that, this might come from a syllabus. So it might say week 1, these are the 5 things that your students need to do. You use those 5 things to make your target in mind. Right. So what about an online lesson? What is different basically in online lessons compared to face-to-face? And I should say that I've been teaching online for probably about 6 or 7 years now. Before that, and also during those 6, 7 years, I've done lots of face-to-face teaching as well. So this is what my opinion is on how it's different from online. If you agree with me, if you disagree with me, please do put it in the chat. Right. There are lots of different factors that vary online lessons. I tend to think that if you're going to be face-to-face somewhere, it's probably going to be a group lesson. You could have small numbers. Sometimes it's one-on-one, but quite often if a school's going to pay you for your wages, they want a group lesson. Okay. But online lessons vary a lot more, and you have to keep this in mind when you're planning your lessons. So student age is a big one with online lessons. So you might be teaching kids in the morning, teaching adults. And within the kids, there's lots of different age ranges. And, you know, if you're teaching 3, 4, 5-year-olds, then they're not going to be very tech savvy, probably, or not know. Well, they probably know how to, you know, watch a YouTube video, but they might not know how to share a screen or that kind of thing. As you get up sort of through the teenage years, hopefully they will be able to do that. And you've got to keep this in mind because you've got to think, what will they be able to do in the lesson if you're doing it online? The other thing to think about is student or teacher technology. So what are the limitations in the technology that you have? And I know some teachers that try to teach from a mobile phone, for example. I wouldn't recommend that, but I know that some that do. I know that teachers try and teach from a tablet. Again, I think this is quite difficult because I think you need a keyboard to be able to type quickly. I also think you need to have some sort of software and be able to switch windows quite quickly. That's what I think. On the flip side of that, you've got to think about what the students have. So sometimes you teach a group of students and maybe there's 3 or 4 and they're in a room on the other side of the camera. I've done teacher training remotely where there's a group of 20 people on the other side of the camera, and there's me sat in China, and there's me sat in my office here in Belfast. And that's quite different. There's 20 of them. They can touch each other. They can pass each other, all that kind of thing. You're sat here on your own. You never actually see the room they're in. I've also done online lessons where there's sort of 10, 15, 20 people in little boxes on Zoom or Microsoft Teams. I've also taught lessons where they have amazing laptops. They have amazing printers. They've got 2 screens to look at. And I've also taught students which just have a mobile phone. And it's all very different. So you might think, well, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that. They log in on their mobile phone and they can't see the screen. They can't switch windows very easily. All that kind of thing makes it difficult. The student location also makes a difference, especially with the connectivity. I tend to find that the connection to China from the UK is worse than the connection to Europe or the connection to South America. The same when I do examine into Africa, that connection tends to be worse than other places. So just something to think about because you've got to be a bit more lenient with that. And also the type of English that's being studied. So if you're teaching academic English, that would be quite generally, not always, but generally quite formal. And, you know, there's lots of sitting around and looking at screens. Whereas if you're teaching kids, or young learners or teenagers, you kind of want to be up and you want them to be up and about walking around. You might also stand up and walk around then just to get the total physical response, that kind of thing. So all these factors do vary in your lesson plan and the type of activities you're going to do and how you're going to present them. And all of these together affect your target goal, basically, because you've got that goal and how you go about doing it, what all of these things added together would change the sort of activities you're doing and then your lesson plan. Right. I think it's very important online to have a technology failure plan. And I go through students, especially my adult students, I go through this on the first lesson that I have with them. With kids under 10, it's a bit more difficult, especially if their level is quite low, because it's one thing teaching them English, it's another thing altogether to teach them technology English, like how to share screens, all that kind of thing. What you might want to do, and I do this for some examining work that I do, is I have a printed A4 piece of paper that I hold up and I have it in their language. So I have, for example, some kids lessons in India, and I have before had it written on there like, your microphone is turned off. And then I've actually put a picture of the microphone, a button for them to push. Turn your sound up, something like that. I've done that, and I think that works pretty well. I have tried that, and it has got me out of some sticky situation. But the key thing to do is to know what will happen if the tech fails. How are you going to get the technology going? Because if there's a group class, there's 5 or 6, and there's one student that's having issues, if you're all sitting around waiting for that one student to work out that they're on mute, or the one student to work out how to type into the chat box, your class aren't going to get anywhere. The other students are going to get annoyed. So have a plan for what's going to happen. What will you do if your tech fails? What will the students have to do if their tech fails? And you put this on a PowerPoint at the start. You go through it in the first lesson. You might even have it up on the screen on the 2nd or 3rd, 5th, 20th lesson, as you'll in like the 5 minutes before they are due to start to log in. Okay. What will you do if a student disappears for 10 minutes? And I'm going to tell you a bit what I will do, but it's one thing for them to just disappear for 3 or 4 seconds. It's another thing altogether to do if they're 10 minutes gone. Do you reteach it? Do you go back? If it's one-on-one, it's not an issue, but if it's a group lesson, you need to think about that. And it really does depend on the situation, I think. It depends if it's a one-on-one and they're paying you. If they disappear for 10 minutes, that's fine. It depends on you and how free you feel about giving them an extra 10 minutes at the end if they miss 10 minutes because of the connection. Are you a nice guy, or are you not a very nice guy? And you say, well, I'm sorry, that's not my fault. Really does depend on the situation. Depends on if they've got an exam tomorrow, all that kind of thing. It also depends if you're working for a company. So these are my rules for group classes with tech. Yeah. If a student disappears, I wait 90 seconds, no more. So let's say I'm teaching 5 students and one of them disappears, their connection goes, they get kicked off a Zoom or something like that. I look at the timer, because I have a timer going in my corner, and I say, right, okay, everyone, we're just going to wait 90 seconds for Miguel to come back. And you sit there, and yes, there's a bit of silence for 90 seconds. It can be a bit awkward, but if Miguel doesn't appear within 90 seconds, I say, okay, guys, right, we're now going to continue with the lesson. And I just carry it on as if Miguel has gone home or something like that. I don't reteach the parts that they have missed. So remember, this is for group classes. I would, if they disappear for that long and they miss a key bit of vocabulary I was teaching or a key bit of grammar I was teaching, it's kind of not my fault in a group lesson, and I can't go back to do it. So I tell them this, and how they then get it is then hopefully in the next breakout room or the next paired work that you give them. Hopefully the other student will tell them, or if not, you can then maybe go in. But I don't, teach for 5 minutes, then Miguel comes back and I teach that 5 minutes again. No, It just doesn't work. If my tech goes, I have a backup laptop. Down here, I have a backup laptop. I use a desktop computer. Yeah, if my computer goes off, then yes, for 3 or 4 minutes, I might not be able to tell the students. But I've told them in the first lesson, this is what's going to happen. The backup laptop, I start it up. This is written into my lesson plan. This is written to the materials that I'm telling them. If my internet goes on everything and I use my 3G or 5G it is now, I get on it with the same link and I say, look, guys, I'm really sorry. This is what's going to happen. I've tried my best, but it's not. Can we reschedule? I always have a backups. And I think on lesson plans, you've got to have that. If I can't get back online, I give students a full refund. If they are my private students, if you go work for a company, they will have their own rules about it. And you've got to stick to those rules if you're going to go work for a company. They might say, if your internet fails, you don't get paid. That's where I like to have a backup. When I have worked online for companies, I feel like I should have a backup for them just in case. They might say that if a student disappears for 5 minutes, you've got to come back and they've got to come back. You've got to reteach it to them. Up to you, and how that company works. Okay. Right. When you're planning, you've got to think about students' technology and ability. Don't think students will be able to do everything in the plan that you have. I quite often find that students don't have the ability that I thought they would have. Okay. Sorry, I should say at this point, I can see all the hellos are coming in. Please do get your questions in if you've got any, because at the end of this presentation I'm doing, we're going to have a bit of time to talk about any questions you might have. Okay. Don't think students will be able to do everything. Have that plan in your lesson plan that if the student can't find the shared document, what are you going to do? If the student can't type onto the interactive whiteboard, what are you going to do? Prepare for the most basic level of tech. So I still now do lessons sometimes where it's just me and a camera, and then I hardly touch anything. I hardly click on anything. I've got a normal whiteboard and I write on the whiteboard. Okay. Prepare for basic tech. That's what, and then anything on top of that is a bit of a bonus, especially at the start when you don't think that the first lesson you have with a student, you're going to be able to do all sort of whizzy crazy things, because they might not be able to keep up with you. If they have mobiles or they have tablets, it gets a bit more tricky when you share your screen to them, or if you swap windows or you get them to swap windows. So for example, if you have some sort of shared document, or if you have some sort of whiteboard, special whiteboard in a web browser that's not built into the Zoom or the Teams software, getting them to switch on a tablet or getting them to switch on a phone is tricky. Quite often they will switch and then they've lost the sound to you, or they've lost the picture and you can't see them. So don't, especially with mobiles and laptops, I think mobiles and tablets, sorry, don't get them to share screens. Don't try not to share screens or get them to swap windows. Get them to know the basics. And the basics are turning on and off your cameras and your microphones. Put that into your first ever lesson plan. This first bit we're going to be, and you might think, oh, they should know this after 4 years or 5 years of COVID and learning online, but a lot of them still don't. Okay. Have it written down on a PowerPoint, something like that, or have it printed out and hold it up, something like this. Okay. Right. Online, when you're teaching online, instructions are key and you put them in your lesson plan. Write down in your lesson plan clear instructions. So it can be quite, if you're asking them to do something like switch screens and then type into a interactive whiteboard, or if you're asking them to open the chat box or to talk to each other and then go into chat box, that can be quite tricky. So writing down in your lesson plan clear instructions, I think really, really helps. So use phrases such, I remember, hopefully you would have taught this in the first or second lessons that you've been with them, in the chat box, because quite often they don't know where to do anything. So type in the chat box, or in the chat box, type in the chat box, write, something like that. Type into the shared document called document 4. Type into the shared document called past simple. Make it very, very clear what a shared document is and what the chat box are. Have clear instructions that you've written down on your lesson plan. In the breakout room, talk to your partner. In your breakout room, discuss something like that. Get them knowing exactly what they all are. And the reason why you write it down in your lesson plan is because if you're having to think off the top of your head as you're going, how you need to describe what a breakout room or a shared document is, if you're really not down with it, you really don't understand it, then having to do all of this while you're thinking about this, while you've got people looking at you, is tricky. And when you start teaching, practice your instructions that you're going to put in your lesson plan. Get your mum on the other side of a Zoom call. You're upstairs, she's downstairs, or different locations, or something like that, or your dad, and say, look, Dad, I'm going to ask you to do this. Can you do it? If they can't do it, then your student might not be able to do it. So you get practicing your instructions. And obviously with instructions, try to concept check, especially in group classes. Pierre, where are you going to type? Oh, I do not listen. Okay, I'm going to read the instruction again, Pierre. Okay, right, there you go. Concept check, make sure that they know what they're doing. So one of the questions I get asked quite a lot are, do lessons change online? So face-to-face is one thing. Actually going online is something different. Do the lessons change online? And my answer to that is kind of. The theory behind language learning doesn't change. So nowadays, the theory of language learning is that students should be talking a lot. The teacher should not be talking that much. That the type of materials you use, they should be authentic. All that kind of thing is still used online as it is in face-to-face classes. So what I try to say is your destination is the same. You are trying to get your students to be better at speaking grammar, to be better, more accurate at speaking vocabulary, to be better listeners. Whatever your destination is, it would be the same face-to-face as it would be online. With kids, learning 10 words. With kids, even it's practice singing a song to improve pronunciation, something like that. Your destination, where you're trying to get to at the end, is the same face-to-face online. But what is different is your mode of transport. So what does that mean? It just means the way you get there will be different from face-to-face to online. Okay. Choose tools that suit you and your students. You got to keep your students in mind when you're planning your lessons. You think, right, do you know what? This is a really great piece of software that I found. It's fantastic. I really like doing it. Let's use that in the class. Oh, wait there, they can't access it. Oh, they've got to create an account. Oh, they don't have a Google account, so they can't create it quickly. Oh, they've forgotten their password. All that kind of thing is tricky. So choose tools that help you in your class and get you through your class. I believe that every activity can be completed online using special software. Anything that you find on Google telling you, right, this is a lesson plan for the past perfect, I believe can be moved and changed, can go online just as easy. It might need to be adapted. The destination is the same, but the way you're doing it, the transport mode is different. You've got to have a bit of an imagination, I think, to be an online teacher, especially if you're making your own lessons. You've got to be able to realize that what you've seen and what you picture, it can be done online. You might see a lesson plan. It's like, okay, get the students to run somewhere. And that might be fine if you've got a group of students that you're looking at through the camera who are together and they can run. But if they can't run, then think, okay, do you know what? Can I do that with an interactive whiteboard? Could I somehow do that with the chat box? You use your imagination about it. These are the tools that I like to use. I use a lot of shared documents. Google is my go-to with that because I tend to find that a lot of people have Google accounts, which is the first step there. If I've got my own students, I do tell them to get a Google account. Okay, so I think Google shared documents help. I tend to use the inbuilt whiteboard software, and I use that in the class in my lessons. But there are external ones as well. The only problem with that is it's another link that they have to do, maybe another account. I like to use Google Slides, or I use PowerPoint. I think that keeps your lesson on track if you can, if they can share the screens. And I also use a physical whiteboard in my office here. I also tend to use pictures that I've printed out and I like to hold up. I think that works pretty well. Right, please, if you are an online teacher, please do put into the chat, what sort of tools do you use in your classes to help you get through? Some people, especially teaching kids, they use puppets, all that kind of thing. Fantastic, really good. Right, I should say Alan is monitoring the chat. I'm just going to ask Alan if he can make this one big here for me. So this is like a typical lesson plan, and they don't sort of build on it one by one, but this is what I would put in an online lesson plan. And as I said, if you do a 120-hour TEFL certificate, you will be taught how to write a lesson plan. Okay. So the sort of thing I would put is something like a warmer stage to start with. Teacher shows picture 2, students discuss in pairs what they see. That's the activity. And then what I put here is the instructions. Yeah. And this is what I will actually say out loud to them, so I know exactly what I'm going to do. And some teachers I know print this out, put it underneath. Some teachers have it in a smaller window in the bottom of their screen. That's fine. That, and then the time, but then I also put the tools that I'm going to do, so I can keep track of what slide to show or how to do it with a shared screen. I think having this just helps you to know and keep on track of all the different types of software that you're going to have. Then, for example, something like a controlled practice. As I said, these aren't really linked. I'm just showing you different types of lesson instructions you can put in your lesson plan. What they are actually doing, the activity, the instructions, very clear. And then if I have to repeat them, would say them again, timing. And then what I'm going to use a Google shared document, and I'm going to use the chat in Zoom. Okay. So that's the kind of thing that I reckon you would put in an online lesson plan. Now, you can go into more detail, and I do know that many teachers do. They have 4 or 5 different columns there extra, and they could put in like the motivation for doing it. They could put the interactive pattern. They could even put in things like click here or the name of the file, all that kind of thing. That's the perfect for you. But I think that's the basics that you really do need to have when doing an online lesson. Please, if you have done some online lessons, please do put in there the lesson plans that you do. And if you disagree or agree with me, also please do put that in the chat. Right. Thank you for all the hellos. I'm going to get to your questions now. Hi, Nana in Birmingham. Hi, Tim. Hi, Maniac. Could be a fun teacher in Slovakia. Mark's in Cheshire. Calvin is in Thailand at the moment. Nana's there. Hi. Dudima's in Ghana. Claudia's in New York. All the hellos. Right. Consuelo, sorry. Any platform you personally recommend that is suitable for students looking for conversational practice that doesn't require you to hold a degree. So you're looking for a job there. I think that's what we mean by a platform. It's a company that will take people on. Yeah. Right. The companies that are recruiting change all the time. And I've done webinars where I talk about how to get an online job. I've also done webinars about how to find your own students. And I think long term, this is probably the best way, especially if you don't have a degree, is find your own students, because students tend to not really care if you don't have a degree. Right. Consuelo, what I would do if I was you, I would go to the TEFL.org website. That's our website for this company. I'd go to the blog page and I would type in there online teaching companies. I'm sure Alan, who's monitoring the chat, will put the link in for you. And on there, we have a link of all the different companies, and they say what the different company, they said list different companies. They sort of say what requirements you need, all that kind of thing. And there are jobs out there for people without degrees. You do need a TEFL certificate. Okay. In fact, I can see Alan's put it in the chat there already. So have a look at that one, click on that and see what you can do. See if there's any jobs for that one. Okay. Good luck, Consuelo. Okay. If you're looking to find your own students though, that's a whole different thing. There's a whole different webinar that I need to talk about, but I have done that in the past already. Okay. So have a look on YouTube. I think you're on YouTube. Yep. have a look for Find Your Own Student, something like that, and you'll see a picture of me talking about that kind of thing. Good luck. Hi, Jonathan. Are ESL teaching jobs at international schools usually better paid than regular TEFL jobs? Right. So for anyone that's not sure or doesn't really know what this is all about, an international school tends to be a private school in a where they teach students in English, but not always in English. Sometimes you can have French international schools or German international schools, Spanish, but tends to be English speaking international schools. And the students, the teenagers, the primary school students, wherever they are, they will maybe be, let's say they're in Thailand. Instead of going to a school where they're taught in Thai language, they go to a school where they're taught science, for example, in an English language or French, Spanish, whatever it might be. And to do those jobs, there's tend to be two types of teachers. You have qualified teachers, teachers that have got a qualified teacher. So that would allow them to be a high school teacher in science, history, chemistry, maths, whatever it might be in their own country. And they then just move to Thailand and they teach like that. Those jobs tend to be slightly better paid than regular TEFL jobs. They do, because you tend to need to have had slightly more qualifications to have got one of those jobs. So yes, that's for those jobs. Now, the next set of jobs within an international school are English as a second language jobs, where someone would go and they would just teach students how to write, speak, listen, read in English. They wouldn't necessarily teach science, history, anything like that. They will be teaching sort of regular EFL. Right. Those jobs, yes, they tend to be slightly better paid than like a language school, because they tend to come with slightly better perks, is the short answer. However, those jobs can be more difficult to get. They quite often require people to have degrees, a bit of experience, maybe even sort of start be looking towards master's qualifications. So yes, they do, but they are harder to get. Okay, if that makes sense, Jonathan. I hope it does. Hi, Maniac. I'm glad Maniac's asked the question. What tips do I have if you have a 70-year-old student who wants to learn English, but she cannot remember new words? Oh, Maniac, I'm so glad to ask this question. Right. So people cleverer than me who have PhDs, probably written some of these textbooks, that kind of thing, have done lots of research into learning languages. They have come up with, I think the number is 12. I'm sure there's different ways out there of looking if you actually start looking into it. But basically, to learn a new word in a foreign language, you need to interact with it 12 times. What does that mean? So that means you either need to read it a few times in different sentences. You need to say it a few times in sentences. You can't just go student, 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 student. Now I know it. Now you've got to sort of speak. Okay, the student went to school. The student did their homework. You know, doing it in different contexts. Same with reading it in different ways, writing it. And the whole point is that the student tends to, if they can do it 12 times, then they are going to learn it. So that's what I would say to you. Now, if it's somebody of advanced years, and I also forget words in English myself, and I'm not quite 72 yet, I think really it's just something that you kind of got to live with if that's sort of an issue that they have inside them. All right. The other thing I would say is do some work on recording vocabulary, as in, you know, making sure that they have a good reference of how they write it down. So, you know, do they write the phonetics down? Do they use it as do they put the word class down? Do they write it in a sentence? Do they do a definition? All that kind of thing, because that also helps with vocabulary to stay in there. Okay. I hope you I hope that answers your question. Me Maniac. Lovely name. I think we've got a question coming in from Instagram, which I can't get up on the screen. Hello to anyone watching on Instagram. Hi, Donya Said. Hi. What about a beginner student who wants to start with phonics? Right. So this is an interesting one. So if they want to, if they're a youngster, if they're a kid, I'm guessing they are probably if they want to do phonics, I would go down the route of trying to find materials that are built for kids to read in English. So, for example, my daughter, when she was sort of 2, 3, 4, she was learning to read. We would have a textbook. We would have text. We would have storybooks. You know, we would spend a lot of time just looking at the pictures, trying to link the words to the pictures, breaking down the syllables, all that kind of thing. There's lots of good stuff on the BBC website about that. I think it's called BBC Bite Size. It's a really good website for that, breaking down the phonics, all that kind of thing. Donya. So I would start with that. Now, if they're a little bit older, it becomes more difficult. I mean, really, phonics tends to be used to read, to learn to read. Now, if you're talking about phonetics, which is about production of the different sounds in languages, to do that, you tend to concentrate on one sound at a time. And if you find a general English textbook, you will see that the pages have just one sound that tends to be a student learns at a time. Something like New English File, Cutting Edge, that kind of thing. Those are the textbooks. Have a look at those, see if that helps you, Donya. And thank you for your question. Mark, hi. Are you correct in thinking that some online lessons provide lesson plans? That's a good place to start for new teachers. Would I agree? Yes, 100%. Planning lessons takes time. And going to work for a company, they should provide you all the materials that you need. And I think this is a perfectly acceptable thing to ask about in the interview, if that's something that's important to you. I also think that companies tend to advertise when they are going to provide lessons because it attracts teachers. If you are going to do an online lesson where they don't provide the lessons, they don't provide the lesson plans and materials, a couple of things you need to work out. If you're going to do 20 different lessons, let's say 20 different 1-hour lessons to 20 different groups of students at different levels, that's going to be a lot of lesson planning. However, if you're going to do, let's say you're going to repeat the same 1-hour lesson 10 times, then you're going to do another 1-hour lesson another 10 times. So you've only then got to plan twice for 2 lessons. That's not too difficult. Obviously, there's a bit of planning with all work, but if there's no materials and you've got to find your own materials, finding 20 different types of materials is much more difficult than finding materials for twice for 2 lessons. So that's something that I would definitely have a look at, Mark, and think about it. Yeah. Quite often you'll see on Reddit, Reddit, there's discussion boards there about online teaching. There's also Facebook groups. We have our own Facebook group, which you can join. Quite often, if you have a question, you put the question in there. Someone else will answer it. I monitor it. Alan monitors it as well. Okay. I think we're coming to the end. I can't see any more questions. Thank you very much for everybody that has tuned in. Oh, wait, there is on the Instagram. Here we go. Supposing our class of 15 students, how can we check the understanding level of each student? Sarah, hi. Interesting one. So different ways. First of all, within the class, if you're going to be checking the understanding of instructions, I always tend to pick on the dumbest student there, to be honest with you, because if the dumbest student understands what the instructions are, hopefully the rest will. If you're then checking sort of if they understand the grammar, if they understand the vocabulary, monitoring is the first way. So if it's a face-to-face class, you're walking around, you're checking their writing, they're checking that they've got the controlled practice correct. If it's online, you can check it by doing shared documents. You can also do it by if they're sending you the answers via their private chat, you'll be able to do that one. You can also check it in breakout rooms. Basically, the key way to do it is to be on your toes, Sarah. You know, you've got to be monitoring at all point. You sort of got to be going around checking all the students. Online, you've got to be checking what they're sending in. You've got to be going between breakout room to breakout room. So if you've got 15 students, you've got maybe, let's say, 4 breakout rooms, 5 breakout rooms, something like that. You are going in between them and you're asking questions to the students to see if they get it. You're looking at what they're talking about. You're lurking, all that kind of thing. Right? Hope that answers your question there, Sarah. Thank you very much, everybody who has been tuning in. This is one of a series of ones we're going to do on lesson planning. There's also lots and lots of YouTube videos, Facebook videos that we have, LinkedIn as well, from past topics. So if I haven't answered your question or it's not a topic you like, then go back and have a look. Hopefully you will find that then. We're going to have a break now for Christmas, but in the new year, we'll be coming back with a lot more videos. And I really thank you for tuning in. Please, if you like this video, please did like it and write down. And if you didn't like it, also put in why you didn't like it, because we need to learn as well. And why not tell your other teacher friends? More information at tefl.org. Have a good day.